When we think of global trade in the past, images of European merchants, Silk Road caravans, or colonial ports often dominate the story. Yet long before European dominance, African trade networks were among the most sophisticated in the world, spanning deserts, oceans, and rivers, connecting kingdoms, empires, and communities across vast distances. These networks were more than a series of local markets. They were intricate systems of logistics, currency, and diplomacy, capable of supporting commerce on a scale that rivaled contemporary networks in Asia and Europe. By examining Africa's Trans-Saharan, Indian Ocean, and inland trade routes, we gain a deeper understanding of a continent that was economically interconnected, politically savvy, and globally aware long before colonialism. Trans-Saharan trade, crossing the desert with precision. The Trans-Saharan trade networks were among the most impressive logistical feats in African history. From roughly the 8th century onward, caravans crossed the Sahara Desert, linking West African kingdoms like Ghana, Mali, and Songhai with North African and Mediterranean markets. Key features of these networks included caravan logistics. Traders used camels, known as the ships of the desert, to transport gold, salt, textiles, and other goods over hundreds of miles. Caravan routes were carefully planned around water sources and seasonal patterns, demonstrating advanced knowledge of geography and environmental conditions. Currency systems. Gold from West African mines was a cornerstone of trade, complemented by cowrie shells, salt slabs, and later minted coins. These were standardized, widely recognized, and used to facilitate transactions across hundreds of miles. Diplomacy. Trade was not just economic, it was political. Empires like Mali and Songhai negotiated safe passage through territories, paid tribute to allies, and mediated conflicts among nomadic and sedentary communities. Merchants often acted as informal diplomats, building networks of trust that ensured the flow of goods. For example, the Mali Empire under Mansa Musa, early 14th century, controlled trade routes that connected the interior to North African markets in Timbuktu, Gao, and Fez. These routes facilitated not just gold trade, but also the exchange of salt, kola nuts, cloth, and even manuscripts. The scale, organization, and wealth generated by these networks rivaled the contemporary Mediterranean trade systems. Indian Ocean trade, Africa's maritime connections. While Trans-Saharan trade relied on desert logistics, the Indian Ocean trade showcased Africa's maritime expertise. Coastal cities like Kilwa, Sofala, Mombasa, and Zanzibar participated in a vibrant exchange network linking East Africa, Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia. Maritime technology. African sailors used dhows, sailing vessels designed for monsoon winds, to navigate long distances. Knowledge of currents, seasonal winds, and navigation techniques was essential for trade across thousands of miles. Port cities as hubs. Kilwa Kisawani, for example, became a major trading city by the 14th century, exporting gold, ivory, and slaves in exchange for textiles, beads, and ceramics. Cities served as centers of commerce, finance, and governance, regulating trade and taxes. Integrated networks. The Indian Ocean trade required coordination between inland and coastal regions. Inland merchants transported goods from mines, forests, and farms to ports, where maritime traders then carried them across the ocean. This integration demonstrates complex supply chain management centuries before modern logistics theory. These networks also involve legal and diplomatic frameworks, including agreements between kingdoms, tribute systems, and standardized measures. The result was a globalized commerce system centuries before the modern era, with African states as central players. Inland trade, rivers, lakes, and market towns. Africa's trade was not limited to desert or coastal regions. Inland routes, rivers, and lakes formed vital arteries of commerce, connecting communities over thousands of kilometers. The Niger River, serving as a backbone for West African trade, the Niger connected cities like Timbuktu, Gao, and Djenné, facilitating the movement of grain, gold, and salt. River transport allowed bulk goods to travel faster and more efficiently than overland routes alone. Great Lakes region, In East Central Africa, networks around Lakes Victoria, Tanganyika, and Malawi connected mining regions, agricultural zones, and coastal ports. Traders exchanged iron, copper, ivory, and agricultural products using canoes and small boats. Market towns. Key inland towns functioned as logistical and financial hubs, coordinating trade between producers and long-distance merchants. They standardized weights, maintained storage facilities, and even acted as centers of credit and lending. Currency and economic innovation. Trade networks required systems of value that could function across regions with different languages, cultures, and goods. Africans developed innovative economic tools to meet this need. Gold. West African gold was mined and refined into nuggets or coins, recognized across the Sahara and beyond. Its use extended from local trade to global exchange. Cowrie shells. Used as a medium of exchange in West and Central Africa, cowries were durable, portable, and widely trusted. Salt and other commodities. In some regions, salt blocks were used as standardized currency, reflecting both utility and value. Credit and trust networks. Merchants often extended goods on trust, relying on social and familial networks to guarantee repayment. This allowed long-distance trade to flourish without centralized banking systems. These systems were not only practical, they were remarkably sophisticated, demonstrating an understanding of economics, risk management, and cross-cultural negotiation that rivaled any contemporary global trade system. Diplomacy and political strategy. Trade was inseparable from politics. African states understood that commerce depended on security, alliances, and negotiation. Leaders invested in diplomacy to secure safe passage for caravans and maritime traders, regulate competition between internal markets, protect trade routes from bandits and hostile states, mediate disputes between merchant communities and neighboring kingdoms. The Mali, Songhai, and Great Zimbabwe empires, among others, used diplomatic envoys, tribute systems, and intermarriage to maintain stability along trade routes. Merchants themselves were often politically influential, acting as advisors to rulers or informal diplomats in distant regions. This integration of commerce and diplomacy ensured that trade networks were resilient, capable of surviving environmental challenges, political upheavals, and competition. Global reach and connectivity. African trade networks were not isolated. They were fully integrated into global commerce centuries before European colonization. Gold and ivory exported from West and Central Africa, reaching North Africa, the Mediterranean, India, and even China via Indian Ocean intermediaries. Textiles and beads, imported from India, Arabia, and Europe, then redistributed inland, demonstrating reverse integration. Slaves and labor. While tragic in later colonial contexts, pre-colonial labor systems were often intertwined with trade networks and local economies, reflecting African society's role in regional and global commerce. By facilitating cross-continental exchange of goods, ideas, and technology, African trade networks were central to the economic development of multiple continents, not peripheral players. Lessons from Africa's trade networks. 1. Logistics and planning. Matter, organizing desert caravans, maritime voyages, and inland transport required advanced planning, knowledge of terrain, and resource management. 2. Currency and standardization. Enable growth, gold, cowries, and other commodities created a consistent medium for trade across diverse regions. 3. Diplomacy is essential. Trade succeeded because states and merchants negotiated, mediated conflicts, and built trust over vast distances. 4. Integration creates resilience. Linking desert, river, lake, and coastal routes created networks capable of surviving disruption. 5. Global connectivity. African trade networks were connected to the wider world, influencing economies in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East long before colonial intervention. These networks demonstrate that Africa's economic history is complex, dynamic, and globally significant. They challenge narratives that portray pre-colonial Africa as isolated or primitive in trade and commerce. Conclusion. African trade networks were not simple barter systems. They were organized, sophisticated, and globally connected. From the Trans-Saharan caravans of Mali and Songhai, to the Indian Ocean ports of Kilwa and Sofala, and the inland river systems connecting communities to distant markets, Africa was a hub of economic innovation. By studying these networks, we recognize that Africa's historical role in commerce was central, not marginal. Its trade systems relied on logistics, currency, and diplomacy on a scale that rivaled any contemporary global network. Africa's merchants, rulers, and planners demonstrated intelligence, foresight, and organizational skill that shaped the economic landscape of not just a continent, but the world. Engage with history. If you found this exploration of Africa's trade networks fascinating, subscribe for more stories uncovering the continent's forgotten economic and scientific achievements. Leave a comment below. What trade route or innovation surprised you the most? Let's celebrate Africa's ingenuity together.